Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. And I am pleased to be joined by Jacob Lintnor. Welcome to the Motor City Mad Mouse Show here in Mobile, Alabama.
Thank you so much for having me today. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Well, we're talking about a guy, you obviously are in business for yourself, and you also work with a Florida State publication. Please give me an overview of both of those.
Yeah, so I run Lintnor Media, my own media company, where I cover events like this, the Senior Bowl. I interview about to become NFL players, and I run a YouTube where I'm very interested in the NFL draft, so I do my own mock drafts and that kind of stuff. And then I work for an SB Nation company called Tomahawk Nation there in Tallahassee, Florida. I cover baseball, basketball, and football, in person, online, all the things. So that's really a drop of what I do.
So tell me some of the players that you've come in contact with that you've had on.
Yeah, so I've here at the Senior Bowl talked to guys like Riley Leonard, Laiatu Latu, some first-round guys we've seen in the past few years. I talked to Zaire Thomas from Florida State, who's actually a friend of mine. So when I come here, I look for Florida State players, and as you know, this is the first year where there's no Florida State players at the Senior Bowl, unfortunately. But yeah, those are some guys I've talked to.
So who are some of the players you're going to look for since there are no Seminoles?
Yeah, I'll look for, so my family's from Pittsburgh. I'm a big Pitt guy. So Kyle Lewis is out of Pitt. I'll definitely look to interview him. And then, some of the Miami guys are really good as well. And Bud Clark out of TCU is a really interesting guy. So there's some great names around here. I'm excited to get into it.
So you say this is your third Senior Bowl?
Yes, my third time being here in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, what's it been like the last two?
It's been great. There's been great talent here. It's a really great workup. Mobile makes it a really fun place to come and attend this event. So I've really had a great time, and it's a great way to break into the sports media industry.
Yeah, this Hancock Whitney Stadium is not a bad place here. It looks like it's really, to me, really cozy.
Yeah, super cozy. I really like it. It's easy to get around and a fun place. We spend all day here for a few days a week, so it's super fun.
You say you like baseball, right?
I love baseball.
Well, it's amazing. I don't know if you've been over to Eddie Stanky Field, but what's interesting about Eddie Stanky is he only had the Texas Ranger job for all of 18 hours, was 1-0, and he had a 714 winning percentage and took South Alabama to the NCAA tournament 5 times. What are your thoughts about Eddie Stanky himself? I don't know if you've been there, but do you plan to go by there now that I brought it up?
Sounds great. I didn't know much about it, but thanks for telling me about it, and sounds pretty impressive.
18 hours with the Texas Rangers.
That's crazy.
And of course, I know he also managed with the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago White Sox as well. But he has a 714 winning percentage. It's unbelievable. And I was amazed as I was driving by before we were able to get our credentials. So I figured, this baseball thing, I do a couple of baseball shows as well. So why not check it out? And there'll be a lot more things here that we do. So what is it normally like in terms of the routine here and how you go about getting player interviews?
Yeah, so we have practice for about a 2-hour window. And as you see, they go through a progression where they're warming up and then they're breaking more into skill position. We'll see wide receiver one-on-ones is usually the most appealing thing we get here at the Senior Bowl. And then it'll break into a post-practice availability, which is about 10 minutes after each practice for both the American and the national team. So the media will be allowed on the field right after the practice for about 10 minutes. You get to pull any players you want. And then the other big event is the media. I guess it's a brunch this year. Usually it's more like a lunch/dinner. But you'll get about 30 minutes with each team's players to just have them in a room and pull them off to the side and get an interview with them. So a lot of great availability, especially for people that are getting into the industry like me.
Well, let's talk about the Florida State Seminoles. Obviously, Tommy Castellanos got everybody's attention with their win over Alabama, but from then it kind of went downhill a little bit. Let's talk about the Noles in 2025, and then you can follow it up with how did Mike Norvell manage to keep his job?
Yeah, 2025 season, very roller coaster of a season. Coming off a 2-win season, we see beating Alabama, number 8 Alabama at the time, at home. It was a great start to the year, obviously. Went pretty downhill pretty quickly from there. Unfortunately, with some big losses, and as you saw, we saw some scary effort stuff at the end of the year. So obviously the Norvell thing's the elephant in the room and will continue to be. But they're solid with him. I'm in that room very often, and Norvell is confident in the program's outlook moving forward, and so is the athletic director there at Florida State. So it'll be interesting to monitor going into next year.
You feel because he had a lot of money left on his contract that they were reluctant to go ahead and pull the plug on him, and that that this is a make or break year for Mike Norvell?
I think it's a very important year for Mike Norvell either way. There's a lot of factors that go into that. So I think he needs to really re-up on this program and show some growth. I'd love to see the effort stuff be a huge emphasis, which I believe is a great leader. So it's a huge year for Mike Norvell either way. Ton of different factors go into that.
Well, I'll tell you, they played the Miami Hurricanes pretty competitive. They only lost by single digits. What was your impression of that football game?
Yeah, Miami, led that game by a lot for most of that game. I think FSU in kind of garbage time brought it back a little bit. So I think it was way worse of a game, way bigger of a win for Miami than the score would show, 29-22, I believe it was. But yeah, I mean, the final score didn't make it look as bad, so at least we're good with that.
Okay, well, we talked about the Miami Hurricanes, so we're going to transition to them. What are your thoughts about the season that the Canes had?
Yeah, obviously had a great season. I'm a big Carson Beck believer. I mean, people have many reasons that they are down on Carson Beck, but I actually believe he's a very, very solid quarterback and proved to be good enough to get that team past an Ohio State team that won the national championship last year and was loaded and onwards through another number of great teams, end up in the national championship and put up a very, very close game. That defense for Miami, that defensive line we saw with Bain and Mesidor was phenomenal, to say the least. So that team, great team. That's a pretty notable Miami team in recent history, and it was cool to see them go all the way and even bring it to the wire in the national championship.
Yeah, you told me that Bain and Mesidor didn't make the trip. They canceled at the last minute. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, they did. I was really excited to see both of them here, but they both did end up canceling.
And why do you think they did that? Do you think that they felt that they had enough film on tape that they didn't need to go ahead and run the risk of any injury, or that they know that where the draft standing is?
Yeah, I think definitely for Bain. Bain has no reason to be here. It would have been a really cool effort thing to see that he's willing to do something like that, but he has zero reason to be here. He's a top 10 pick, pretty locked, at least in my opinion. And then for Mesidor, kind of the same thing. We see him in the teens/20s when it comes to looking at these mock drafts prior. I also think the weather and all of the complications, there's a lot of different factors into why those two aren't here this week, but definitely for Bain, it's a stock thing.
Okay, and we talk about the Miami Hurricanes. They're obviously loaded with NIL money, so they can I want to say they can get anybody they want, but let's face the reality, Florida State doesn't have the luxury that Miami does with all the NIL money pouring in.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, Miami definitely has much more money and utilizes it very heavily, whereas Florida State is down the pack a good bit when it comes to the amount of money they have as a resource to go out and recruit players from high school and the transfer portal. And I think you get to see that when it comes to roster construction, especially with the quarterback position.
What are your thoughts about Mario Cristobal?
I think he had a huge redemptive year. I was hearing he was getting looks from the NFL, apparently. I'm not sure if those rumors were true or not. But he had a lot to prove, and obviously there's been a lot of scrutiny around him. So he had a huge year getting all the way to the national championship. Yeah,
he seems to improve his win totals by, from what I hear, an average of about 2 wins per year compared to where it started. And you're right, I've heard talk about NFL. The team that was noticeably interested was the Pittsburgh Steelers. We also that went to Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, and the Steelers are my team, so it was interesting to be in the loop with the whole Cristobal thing, but the McCarthy thing ended up panning out more. So it is interesting, though, that he was getting NFL looks. Yeah,
we have a couple more things we'll talk about, and that being this. I think that if Cristobal isn't with the Miami Hurricanes, then I think that he would be tempted to go to the Steelers, because of all organizations, they've only had 4 coaches in forever.
Yeah, I think the job security in that Pittsburgh job is probably the most, because we see such longevity out of each coaching candidate that it has to make you feel good as someone coming in that room, as you have a pretty secure job there, at least. So as a guy like Cristobal, I think for any coaching candidate, they would love to see that kind of security at that position.
Yeah, when you look at college football in general, we talk about a lot of NIL money going around. What are your thoughts about the overall state of college football? Because obviously the transfer portal is still out of control, and they need to get the calendar dates in line.
Yeah, no, they definitely need to get the calendar dates in line with the national championship and what that looks like in that college football playoff, with people already leaving and bowl games being worthless and all the things. But yeah, the overall, I mean, there's much talk of the overall outlook on NIL and college football at this point. And yeah, I think transfer limit would be a really great idea. I think it would make people think much more about transferring. And then when it comes to regulating money, I think that's way higher than what I can speak about, because the regulation there is very sophisticated and what needs to take place for lower teams to be able to compete. But also, we did see a team like Indiana compete with less talent this year. So that's a very deep conversation that I don't have all the answers for.
Well, no, I don't think anybody has all the answers to it. But the one thing I noticed that I was dealing with all year is I couldn't believe how much coaching turnover there was, even leading up. Even the Michigan Wolverines changed coaches, but for obvious reasons, because Sharon Moore obviously got himself into some trouble. But are you surprised that there have been so many coaching turnover by the end of the year? With everything that's going around, talk about, I've never seen a coaching carousel this rampant in college football.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that there's a lot of urgency to win, and we see a lot of money being backed up by these alumni and these boosters to go buy a new coach. So I think that's allowing teams to turn over new coaches much more frequently than they would in the past. And money is a mover, as we're seeing in the whole landscape with the transfer portal, but also I think with the head coaching vacancies.
Well, we want to thank Jacob Lintnor for appearing here on the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. We look forward to having him on more shows for the South Florida Tribune Media Network. But I tell you, Jacob, it's been a pleasure talking to you and bringing you on the show. And I look forward to working with you the next couple of days, and you can show me the lay of the land here over at Hancock Whitney Stadium. Fair enough?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you very much for being on. Jacob Lintnor, everybody, on the South Florida Tribune Media Network, the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. We are here at Hancock Whitney Stadium, home of the Senior Bowl. Take care, everybody, and we'll obviously have a lot more by the end of the week. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And also, one other thing I want to mention, my book, Lessons from the Microphone, is now an audio book, and you can also get that on Amazon and Kindle. And please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel as well. And you can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South Florida Tribune. Take care, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us here from Mobile, Alabama.